welcome to another episode of the Vegan Health and Fitness Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. He's a former employee of Vegan Health and Fitness magazine, believe it or not. And that was 9 years ago, I believe. And since then, it's been quite a journey for him. He's been to Australia, Hawaii, and Michigan, where he's from again, and then somehow ended up at Yale as a candidate for a master's in public health. And so he's an expert in public health and has always, as long as I've known him, been a brilliant guy with many wonderful things to say. So I know this is going to be a great interview. I want to give you an opportunity. I did such a sloppy job with your bio, just hitting on a few highlights. Dallas, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what people should know about your background.
No, I think you did a pretty good job. Nailed it. My name is Dallas McCullouch. I'm 37 years young. I was born and raised in a city called Battle Creek, Michigan, little industrial town west of Detroit. Spent most of my life on tour with punk rock bands. Still playing bands. And at a certain point, got sober when I was 27. Moved to Austin. Started working for you guys for a couple of years, and wound up in Australia for a while, and then Hawaii, and then went back to college. And I guess my 30s is just dedicated to academia, I guess. And now I'm 37, and I'm about to finish up with an MPH program in May, as long as I don't mess it up too badly. And then, hoping to keep just basically balancing punk rock and public health. It's kind of my scene.
How many people can say they're balancing punk rock and public health? I think that's really cool.
Not too, but some. There's a handful you meet occasionally. Actually, here's a funny story. I was wearing this exact shirt at this festival in Florida, and a guy comes up to me. Oh, no, I wasn't. Sorry. There was a guy wearing the same shirt, and I complimented his shirt, and he goes, I know you from Yale. I'm like, oh, you go to Yale? And he goes, no, I work for the Surgeon General. So he happened to be the communications guy for the Surgeon General. He played in a punk band out there. And he was like, yeah, I remember, because I asked the Surgeon General a question when he came to Yale, and the dude's like, I was like, who is this guy in a sleeveless t-shirt, like calling the Surgeon General brother? We're in slip-on Vans. It's like, oh, okay, I got it. The dude works for, I realized we kind of roll in the same circle. So there's a few of us around. Even at Yale, I've had a couple professor, and then another person from the Office of Public Health Practice, and my department all have some sort of background in the punk rock scene. We're around. I mean, it's Brian, obviously, how many times has he seen whatever Dead Kennedys or Oingo Boingo or Devo or whatever? We're around. Punks are around. We got to educate and run things now.
That's cool. Well, I wanted to talk to you about how the punk scene, was involved in your decision to become vegan, or it coincided at the same time that you got sober. And it seems like a lot of people who are familiar with the punk scene know about the whole straight edge movement, and Ian McKay, who I guess coined the term. I said it right. I didn't say McKay. He coined the term straight edge. And it's funny because I was listening to an interview with him, and he was talking about how when he coined that term, and it was to talk about his upbringing of feeling like an outcast and like being marginalized because he maybe didn't choose to want to drink a lot and do drugs and have promiscuous sex like the other guys that he was buddies with, and he would get ridiculed for that. And so he was talking about that. And then when he created a movement without even meaning to, by having this song, that movement created a group of people who started marginalizing other people within the punk scene who chose to drink and have promiscuous sex or things like that. And how ironic that was, and that it kind of pissed him off.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard him speak on that, and he said but I remember him one interview, he said, but could you imagine, let's say some of these gangster rappers sing about killing people? What if people took that to heart? The idea of murdering people, I don't know how you'd sleep at night, at least he had good intentions. And if people want to run with that, that's kind of out of his jurisdiction. He's always seemed like a pretty down to earth guy. But yeah, so I guess the background in that scene, when you think of the whatever 70s and 80s rock and roll scene, it's especially when you get in the 80s, songs about doing cocaine and banging strippers, and this, driving down Spolvita, like just that hair rock crap. And there's, just a backlash against a lot of that with people, Minor Threat. You said Ian MacKaye, Minor Threat. That was early '80s. Singing much more, I guess, positive music. They kind of really started the American hardcore punk scene. But even before that, it's when you look at the Clash, for sure, like there was definitely much more the leftist political overtones. Even before that, looking at the MC5 from back where I come from, they were the White Panther movement. Like that was like some diehard like anti-Vietnam, anti-racist sort of action sort of thing. So it's there's been a contingency within a lot of the I guess rock and roll scene, but especially when you get into the more the punk rock side of things, that's been a pretty standard part of it. So a natural extension of that is going to be environmentalism and animal rights being a contingency of that. So my exposure, I remember just going to like a local hall show when I was probably 14 and seeing a band where the guitar player on his guitar just said, "Animals are not ours to eat, wear, or experiment on." I'm like, that's, I guess, I started getting the gears turning a little bit. I remember going to, probably some other show, and it wasn't weird to have, like info shop libraries and stuff that were set up. The internet wasn't that big, but there was, zine libraries and animal rights stuff was going to be an extension of that. It was frequent for, PETA to set up for things. I think of like when I was in high school, I remember, Goldfinger having Open Your Eyes was like a pretty major album with lots of like very blatant things about veganism. So yeah, at a certain point, I remember just thinking like, I guess I got a pet dog. I wouldn't rip its head off and eat its corpse. So why would I do it with a pig? It just seemed very hypocritical. And I made some friends from, I guess, kind of the suburbs next town over, and one of them was vegetarian. He had some like, it was like a Boca burger, like a Morningstar chicken patty thing. I remember eating one and be like, "Oh, this is pretty good. I could do this," So it was 4th of July, 2002. I was just like, I'm just not going to eat meat again. And I haven't, and then, a few years later, I went vegan. So it's been, I guess, 14 years, I think. So
Nice.
been out for a while for sure. But yeah, it's just kind of it ties in the whole idea of the, what do I say, human liberation, animal liberation. Like it's all related.
Right. And so for you personally, you were going through some stuff and looking for a solution. And, I know how much punk music has meant to you. And I feel like this is a very healthy thing about punk music. And it's funny because I didn't know, I'm older than you, and like the punk scene was happening in the early 80s, and somehow I missed it. Like I was listening to pop music, and I feel like it would have influenced me, but I was just into the wrong, I don't know, tempo or something. But it's like now here as an older person, like learning about the stuff that was happening back in the day, I'm like, damn, that was really freaking cool that they were, that there was this opportunity that somebody like Ian MacKaye would create to show people that it's okay to make these choices, and that from that people began eating healthier and saying it's not wrong to be vegan, it's cool, it's okay. And it just, like you say, opened the door for all that. And I'm sure that that's what happened in your personal life, in your personal mind, that it like kind of opened your mind to the idea, and then you were like walking through it and going, hey, I feel better, hey, this is cool. Is that what happened? Just guessing here.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, so it's because, I mean, you've been doing this longer than I am, and you're older than I am as well. So, like the access to the sort of information that we have now, it was not a thing, in Battle Creek, Michigan in 2002. I guess by then, like the big grocery store, it might have a little frozen, veggie section that was, maybe it had some Boca burgers by then, but like soy milk wasn't like really a thing, it wasn't, it's not like now where it's like you watch an NBA game and it'll be like, brought to you by Burger King Impossible Whopper, like that was absolutely not going to be a thing. Or seeing like Taco Bell's new vegan cheese, like, and it's crazy how much things have changed, since I'm about 21 years here, like 30 or something. You've been at this, right?
32.
So
32.
Yeah, well, like long enough where we don't even like really try. I don't know. It's I don't think about it anymore, you know. And so it's crazy how much things have changed. But back then, and you know, the internet was not like it is now either, where it was a much more fringe thing. Like unless you were, I guess, you know, if you were Indian or something, or if you were like Seventh Day Adventist or something, or you know, been some like really freaky, you know, whatever. You're in New York or San Francisco, might have been some hippie, but like, you know, in Mississippi and in the Rust Belt, that was not the standard thing unless you were within one of those sort of like minority circles.
Right. Yeah, I know. I definitely can relate to you since I'm, from the South, from Mississippi, and you growing up in Michigan, that this sort of thing wasn't accessible to us. And it wasn't until for me, when I got out on my own when I was 19 and I was modeling, that I went to a macrobiotic convention and met all these people who, nutrition had turned around all these diseases. And I was also, friends with somebody who was vegetarian and who was making lots of comments, and it was like a whole new world was open to me. Did you have a time in your life when all of a sudden you started encountering this information that you had never encountered before?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was really just going to more shows, you know, and because in my town, you know, there was little hall shows up, but sometimes, you know, we would go to Detroit, you know, or go to Grand Rapids, or some of these other, you know, you get these bigger cities and you get more of these sort of influences. You're meeting people from other places. And that's, I think, good for anybody to like meet people from other places or other walks of life, and they're going to have other ideas. And some of them are going to be terrible, and some of them are pretty damn good, you know, and just the idea is to take the good ones and then try to apply that to your own life. But yeah, so that was definitely it, you know, hanging with more, yeah, going to shows and meeting people, you know, with a very similar, you know, I guess there's definitely a very progressive, like, you know, spirit and ideology that exists within much of that scene, and it was just an extension of that.
Was there a certain song or album that really spoke to you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like a lot of like the classic ones I got into later, you know, how to kind of work my way backwards. So, I mean, the Gorilla Biscuits, their song "Cats and Dogs" is just perfect. You know, big fan of that. Youth of Today, the song "No More" was that they actually had a video for that in the '80s, and it's about the meat industry. You know, and this is like right at the same time when whatever Motley Crue's probably singing "Girls, Girls, Girls" right before, and then it's like here's footage of like these people being opposed to like factory farms, you know, which is pretty awesome. But I didn't get into that till probably a bit later. Some of the earlier ones, definitely Goldfinger, "Open Your Eyes." That was a pretty big one. I remember like Sub the Motions that had some like uh yeah, some sort of messaging on it. Whatever. Anti-Flag, who are definitely not yeah, they are not whatever. They've been very canceled now, but they definitely, you know, would bring a lot of you know, a lot of positive things with them when I'd go see bands like that, too. You know, and just kind of learning that a lot of these, you know, musicians were into that. And at the time, you know, when I was a teenager, it was 9/11 happened. I was 15. So by the time I was, you know, 16, so I went vegetarian. But around then was like we had the war in Iraq, we had the war in Afghanistan and war in Iraq, where one was 2002 and one was like 2003, you know, and I was terrified of like, dude, I was failing out of school. I'm poor, you know, I'm some white trash kid. If the war happens, they're sending me for sure, you know, and I don't want to go murder anybody, you know, and it just seemed like kind of a natural extension of that, of like, I don't know, yeah, it, murdering humans seems pretty stupid. So probably murdering a bunch of animals senselessly is also pretty stupid.
So it's just logic.
I mean, it's not a big leap, you know, to think that, hey, maybe we shouldn't murder any of these creatures, you know, unnecessarily, even if it's like normalized.
And so was animal rights your main impetus, or was it health, or was it both?
Yeah, no, I didn't give a shit about health. You know, like I just didn't. Even when I went vegetarian, my brother would joke that I was a vegetarian who didn't eat vegetables, and all I ate at first was like bean burritos and cheese pizza and like mashed potatoes and peanut butter sandwiches and stuff. And just like, you know, the first time I ever had a salad, I was on a date and I drove. You know, like I was like I just didn't mess with any of that. I remember going to Subway, you know, before I was a vegetarian, and getting a sandwich where it'd be a chicken breast with cheese on it and on white bread.
Mhm.
And like that was the sandwich, So then I think after going vegetarian at first, started kind of exploring other things. I remember like having Jamaican food for the first time, and I've got like a family member who's Cuban, and eating some Cuban food, thinking, oh, this is pretty good, But really, when I started going on tour, I was like 18, 19, and that was traveling around. I'm like, oh, there's a whole world. I didn't know what. I remember trying Indian food for the first time. I'm like, this green thing is amazing. I didn't know what the names were. This brown thing is so good. And yeah, really, it was. I think going on tour more exposed me to a lot of other foods, and I realized once you stop eating a bunch of white people food, it gets a whole lot better and way more vegan friendly generally.
True. I
And there
had
was,
the same experience. That's so funny. I mean, I never thought about how similar maybe Michigan and Mississippi are, other than they both start with MI, but so funny because I mean, I remember when I first went vegan, having a craving for fried chicken, which of course is huge in the South. And so taking tofu and cubes and putting it in the shake and bake, and then putting it in the oven and making shake and bake tofu and telling everybody, oh, like it tastes like fried chicken, And it's funny the things that you're talking about like doing, and then you discover Indian food and you're like, what? This is blowing your mind how good it is.
Yeah. Well, and part of, and I will say, so, and this may be why where we get more of a connection is like my mom, her mom and her stepdad, they were hillbillies. They were from Appalachia. They grew up in the mountains of East Tennessee, tar paper shack, barefoot sort of thing. So I grew up eating a lot of we're talking like biscuits and gravy, or hominy or collards, or like bean soup. It was like I didn't know that that was like soul food or hillbilly food till I made friends with the suburbs. They did not know what any of that was, But to me, that was just pretty standard. And I did like a lot of that sort of stuff growing up. And that's really not super meat heavy, It's if my grandparents, if they had meat, it was going to be like venison or bluegill or something, or Grandpa would go kill possums or squirrels and string them up. It was not like it was not like everybody's got their own pork chop sort of thing, and it wasn't out of an animal rights thing or an environmental thing. It was just out of a poverty thing. It's pretty cheap to make a pot of bean soup. It's pretty cheap to make some dirty rice. It's pretty cheap to to get some potatoes going. So I was fortunate to be exposed to a lot of that. I'm thinking I'll just add some liquid smoke instead of bacon fat, to my greens. Like that's a simple fix right there.
Right. I love making a big old mess of smoky greens and doing it that way. That's awesome that it's the I guess necessity is the mother of invention. When you're vegan and you start craving something, you get into the kitchen, you get creative, and it's more fun for me. I feel like when I watch those chef shows on TV and it's just like, oh, they've been challenged with some ingredient and it's like, and they're still dumping in like a ton of cream and a ton of sugar and a ton of, I'm like, that is cheating. That's the easy way. Like try to cook the way that I cook, which is make everything healthy and vegan. And that's like, that takes some real creativity. And when you accomplish that and it still tastes good, that's when you're like really excited and enlivened about your food.
Yeah, no,
I know
I'm with you.
you do a lot of things where like you invite everybody to come to the gym, and you did this in Austin, and I don't know how many other places where you've lived you've done this. Apparently you're doing this now with the School of Public Health at Yale, and you will do things like you're making seitan sandwiches for everybody. I think that's cool.
Well, so it was kind of modeled after what I would do, and you guys would come hang out when I was in Austin. There's the Bone Breaker Barbell, so we would on Sundays. It was like $10 drop-ins. What's up?
I just want to say it was a vegan gym. It was really
totally. So we just get a crew together, and the idea is to just, I would say this gym is neutral territory. The idea, because it's so intimidating for people that don't know what they're doing to go into a gym. I think a lot of the time, and the idea of if you've got some sort of friends that you're there with, and it's open, and you're not worried about looking stupid. If you're thinking like, you like ask, if half these people know what they're doing, any of you guys that don't know what you're doing, ask any of these people, and they will gladly walk you through. And when we were in Austin, it was cool because we would basically do a cash mob to a different vegan restaurant afterwards. That was awesome, So we'd go work out for an hour and a half or something. We'd just go, all of us go hit some restaurant, and it'd be Counterculture, Casa de Luz, or go hit Bistro Vanish, and some really good stuff. And and they were appreciative because it might be, let's say, 8 to 20 people all rolling in, and that's, if you're a little food truck, like that's very beneficial, that extra whatever 200-300 bucks, $400 that's rolling in. But yeah, so I did kind of have that in mind. So I live like right there. I'm looking at the Payne Whitney Gymnasium, which is Yale's gym. That's like where their basketball arenas and stuff, and their weight room and everything is in there. And yeah, being at Yale School of Public Health, it's very. I mean, until a few months ago, it was part of their med school, right? So much of it is just, and it's Yale, so it's a lot of people who are, their goal is to work in research and to work for the CDC or to, consult for some sort of, whatever tech firm. And that's not my thing. Like my thing over and over is the same thing over. I just say, you guys need to eat some plants and you need to lift some heavy shit sometimes. Like I'm just getting as many advanced pieces of paper as I possibly can, just so I can just keep saying that exact same thing over and over, and maybe it holds more credentials. But every time we have an event through Yale, it's usually just drinking booze and people standing around and eating junk food. And I just don't like doing any of that. So I was like, I go to this gym ideally or I'd hit 5 different muscle groups in a week. I'm there a lot, probably more days than not. And there's got to be some other people that are down, So I started a student group. Yeah, and it got approved. And I said, all right, Sundays at 11, we're going to meet up in front of the gym right here. And if you don't know what you're doing, I'll walk you through it. And if you do, that's cool, and try to help somebody else. And then we got a budget of, it was $300 for the year, which is, it's like $10 a week. And I'm like, all right, I got $10 a week to feed people. Luckily, I grew up around a bunch of hillbillies, and I know how to feed people on $10. And it also comes like being on punk tours a lot of the time. I mean, it bummed me out because let's say if I'm on tour and I'm at some anarcho squat in, I don't know, Switzerland or something, there will be some guy with like a stick and poke face tattoo, named Sock or something, who's like making a giant pot of like some like a vegan curry, with rice, and you'll feed 20 every working there, and the touring bands, like we're all gonna eat, and it's $20 worth of food that he's doing, and it bummed me out every time I go to a Yale event. It's like they're paying 10 times as much money for stuff that sucks, that's completely the antithesis of what we're actually studying at public health. So I want to do better. Yes, I've been doing this week. It's a big like a pesto pasta with it's like artichokes and Kalamata olives, and then garlic sauteed tempeh. So big thing of that, and then slicing up some apples. Just keep it easy. Last week was homemade barbecue seitan on ciabatta with some hummus and some spinach. I guess week before that I did like dirty rice. Just switch it out, and just because I know these kids aren't eating right, and I'm the old guy. I'm 37, which is like pretty old for being in an MPH program without already being a medical doctor, which there are other, guys in their late 30s that are doing it, but they're all MDs. Mm-hmm. So I get stoked when, some of these, 22-year-old kids, 23-year-old kids are rolling in, and, they're stoked to lift weights, and we're building some community around it. And then afterwards we're crushing some food, and like one of my buddies, he's 22, actually he's from Central Valley, California, and he's just crushed it out there. Then he got into Yale, and he's just killing it as a researcher, and he's going to become a medical doctor. And he has absolutely no exposure to like veganism in any capacity. And he's not a vegan or anything, but he's thinking like, oh dude, like this is really good, and you guys are onto something, and I recently learned he had lost 70 pounds or something. Like he used to be like, very overweight and not in like a muscular sort of way or anything. And weightlifting really helped him. And now I'm stoked to thinking if you're going to go become an MD and you're a Yale MPH educated MD, like that's the sort of curriculum you have before becoming the Surgeon General, Right. And if I can get this kid at 23 to learn about how you can eat very healthy on the cheap from eating a bunch of plants, that's great.
That's really awesome. Not only are you influencing other people, but I believe you're going to be a great influence. But I do know that you have this ability to bring people together, to organize people. And I'm wondering, where did you get this skill? I think a lot of people who want to influence others to be healthier, to be more vegan, would love to have your ability to bring people together. Do you think it's from touring with all these punk bands and being in that kind of atmosphere of camaraderie?
Yeah, there's I mean, growing up in a smaller city, we had to throw our own shows a lot of times. So we would play, VFW halls or garages or what like basements. Or I remember playing throwing shows at an arcade, and then doing played a candy shop one time. Just like you would throw shows wherever you could because the infrastructure was not there, and people showed up a lot because they're bored and they're looking for somebody to start something. And if you're just sitting around waiting for somebody to start something, it's probably not going to get done. And there's so many times I think like there are 1,000 people at Yale more qualified to start like this club than me, but they didn't. So then I got to do it because I can't just sit around here. I want to exist, so I create it. And a lot of it also I think does come from my mom. Like my mom's always the lady who like, she'd be the one throwing the bachelorette party, or throwing the baby shower, or like, having the family get together, or graduate. Like she's the lady for that. She knows how to get people, and just if you create something, people will turn up most of the time. And yeah, I've seen how she was never a concert promoter, but she'd be a damn good concert promoter for sure.
So
And sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you're just encouraging people to just have the confidence and just go for it, or is there anything more to it than that?
Just create. If there's something that you want to exist and it doesn't exist, you can probably just create it. I mean, a lot of times it doesn't cost any money to say, hey, Sunday, let's go lift weights. In this case, we all have a free membership as students to the student gym, like that's not that hard. It takes a little bit of effort, but to me it always pays off. I don't know. I like making things, and there's like I don't like managing things, I don't like running things so much. I like creating things, and then I can pass off to somebody else and I will go create something else, and that's I think more my approach. And I guess going back to real quick, I was talking about my mom. She's one of the people that started the Vegan Battle Creek group in my hometown.
Oh, cool.
And I remember like I remember one time I was back visiting, I was still living in Hawaii, going to a vegan potluck they had, and there's over 100 people showing up.
Wow.
And it's if you go to one, whatever here or where you guys live, it's going to be a bunch of like, vegans and yuppies and stuff rolling in. And this was not. It was probably 80% of the people there were not vegans. It was a lot of, I remember some of the guys rolling in, they see my dad, and dad's got a sleeveless Harley Davidson shirt and long hair, and he's curling out, and, and I think that's important to see some, diversity and see, some blue collar working class dudes. And a guy, talks to my dad, and he's like, yeah, doctor said I got to switch up. I had a minor heart attack, and I've either got to change the way I live or I'm going to die, and it's cool seeing, some people to show up and think like, okay, it's not just like a bunch of yuppies hanging out, or a bunch of like, I don't know, hippies or something. Like I'm glad it's become much more normalized.
I think that's very important. But something else I gleaned from that story is that perhaps your hatred of sleeves on shirts might be hereditary.
Yeah, Dad hates sleeves too. He's got big arms too, man. It's Well, I guess I had tiny arms when I used to work for you guys, and I didn't wear sleeves then either. So who knows?
I don't know. I always remember you working out in the gym and doing really well. And
they were toned, but they were a lot smaller. I was about 50 pounds lighter back then. So I actually learned how to lift weights from hanging out with you guys, really. So
that's what happens if you keep it up, though. I mean, I don't know why people stop when they get to a certain age, because being 52 now, I'm finding it like I did take a brief break after 2020. 2020 was such a horrible, crazy year. And then, coming back to it, it was like amazing how fast I got back to where I was. And like now I'm progressing from there so much. And I think that people think, oh, I've gotten to such and such an age, or whatever that number is in their head. And they think their days of working out and stuff is behind them. But I was just talking to a female bodybuilder the other day, and I was like, can you imagine what we're going to look like when we're 80? We're going to be so buff, because we're not going to stop. You just
right.
building.
And that's, I mean, from a public health standpoint, it's amazing. Like, especially when we talk about women, like the rate of muscular loss that women have once they get, let's say, past 40 something is astounding. It's super rapid, but if you have it to begin with, it's going to be lost at a much lower rate, and you will have had more to begin with where you don't have to worry about it nearly as much. And it's also wild, like, this was just being covered in class last week, but it's something I nerd out on, of like, you don't have to do that much activity in order to see like drastic benefits. It's like the difference between doing absolutely nothing and, let's say, getting your heart rate up, 4 times a week for a half hour. Like, the benefits from there are much greater than the difference between that person that like gets somewhat active 4 days a week for half hour versus like ultra marathoners.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the acceleration is super fast, and it levels out pretty quickly. There are benefits to being these like freak athletes, but you don't have to do that much. Just
Right.
doing something instead of nothing is like, that's how you're going to raise your life expectancy, several years. Just not doing nothing.
Right. And I mean, I know we've covered ultra marathoners. I was an ultra marathoner. I ran a 50K. I ran this race called Run Like the Wind in Austin that went on for hours and hours. Actually, we had other people who worked for us in the magazine who ran it for 24, 48 hours. Brian, my partner, ran it for 24 hours one time. So, I mean, nothing against ultra marathoners, but I do think that there's a point of diminishing returns, and there's a point where you're setting yourself up to be more susceptible to all kinds of colds and flus and injuries and things like that. And so really, I mean, even though we have had all these bodybuilders on the cover and the ultra marathoners, because of course these people get a lot of attention because they're doing something that's far extreme from what the mainstream person would do. But at the same time, I feel like really preaching moderation and exercise is ideal.
Totally, yeah. You have obviously some pretty amazing athletes that are coming through, but like, seem pretty healthy, generally from what I've been able to tell. But you're right. It's diminishing returns. Which doesn't mean it's still not a good deal. I don't know. Like we both work out to a point where it's not going to be the same rate as if we just did nothing. But that's what I need in order to keep myself happy and functional. So find what works.
So we've been kind of skipping around a little bit on your story, but let's just tell the story. So when did you start touring with punk bands? Like, how did that come about? How many years have you done it? Tell us about all the wonderful places you toured all around the world.
Right.
And then you've been the lead singer of punk bands. You're currently in a punk band, and I believe you play bass.
I play guitar in a ska band now. Yeah, I started the band on bass, but I play guitar. But yeah, so I started playing in bands. First time I played a show, I was 15. So I jammed around a bit before that, but started playing just hall shows and stuff when I was 15. And then started like touring. Yeah, I used to do some like weekenders and stuff when I was like 17. But I think the first time I went on like a long tour, I was 18 or maybe 19. Definitely by 19, I was like on tour a lot back then. But yeah, so I mean, at this point, I've been to every state. I mean, finally, I went to Alaska a few years ago on tour. We had an Anchorage gig before flying out to Punk in the Park down in California. I was with Authority Zero, who are a phenomenal band from Arizona, and their guitar player is vegan. He's awesome. But all the boys are all good sports about it. Nobody's complaining if we go hit a vegan spot, so that's cool. But yeah, I work in Europe largely at this point. For the last, first time I toured Europe was probably 16 years ago. But for the last, let's say, 5 years, I guess besides whatever 2020, definitely nobody's going to Europe then. But I'm usually in Europe all summer working, which has been cool. So more Germany than anywhere else, which is probably the best vegan scene of any country I've been to in the world, is going to Germany. But Austria, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Slovenia, Poland, UK, Sweden, Denmark, Luxembourg, France, Spain. Just I guess on vacation, been to like Malta, or it was in the Azores. The Azores are phenomenal. Iceland. Going to Cyprus in next month, which will be awesome. Check another country off. Yeah, and then even like, I guess from tour, when I was living in Hawaii, working in Europe, there's no good way to get between those two spots. So definitely spent time in Southeast Asia on route flying home to Thailand and Malaysia and Singapore, and then back to, lived in Australia, and then got to work at Veg Fest in New Zealand. So been around a bit for sure because of this music.
So tell us, how do you do that? How did you get to, I mean, you've done merch for a lot of other bands, and so, and I know
Yeah.
you guys don't spend a lot of money on your housing when you're traveling, so you're able to like all share spaces to stay. Because I think a lot of people are listening to this thing going, okay, he's talking about being a white trash poor boy from Michigan, and he's doing these luxurious trips all over the world. How is he doing this?
Yeah,
And
but
they like to do it too.
well, I mean, on Tuesday, I'm going to Puerto Rico. Why? Because I found round trip flights for $120, and you can stay on the ocean for $70 a night in Rincon. So I'm like, I'm gonna go do that. I don't know if I'm in Connecticut right now. If I said I went to New York for the weekend, nobody would bat an eye. But if I said I'm going to Puerto Rico, like, ooh, extravagant. I'm like, it's cheaper for me to go to Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
Uh, it's similarly, like next month, I'm going to about a $320 round trip flight to London. I'm flying at stupid hours. I'm not picking my own seats. I bring one messenger bag, and then from there, I found a flight to Cyprus for $40. So I'm like, I'm gonna go to Cyprus, and once you get there, it's real cheap. When I lived in Austin, I remember going to Nicaragua. It was round trip under $200 to get to Nicaragua. When you get there, it's real cheap. So I think it's a matter of, I mean, I don't have any kids. That probably helps immensely. I don't have, I don't know, I don't buy. All I buy is food, and I travel,
Mhm.
and that's just what's important to me, really. I go see bands, or I guess I go to sporting events. But even there, I get nosebleeds. I don't care. But yes, if you want to live pretty simply, you can pull that off.
Mhm.
Um, but if I mean, if you're trying to go, whatever, stay in resorts, and they're that can be very expensive. Or if you're trying to, I don't know, just buy a bunch of souvenirs for stuff, or you need to fly first class, and it's going to be steeper. And I don't have that kind of money. And yeah, I learned a lot of this on tour. And now on tour, we're living pretty all right. I mean, a lot of time we're doing festival circuits. Like if I'm out in Europe, we're staying in pretty nice hotels and stuff generally. I'll still sleep on a floor, don't get me wrong, but like, the days of getting 3 bands with 20 dudes sleeping in a living room that smells like cat piss. I'm not saying they're done, but they're far less frequent than they were 20 years ago, for sure. Like we're much more likely to have, good hospitality, killer vegan food much of the time, because it's just so standard for a promoter to think like, I don't want to make 4 different things, so I'll just make one thing that's vegan.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
everybody can eat the vegan thing.
that's the idea. Yeah, it's donating O-type blood. It works for everybody.
That's right. It's a good way of looking at it. I like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so, and you ended up going from being this, kid from Michigan who was touring around with all these bands. And one day you sent us an email and you said, hey, I really like Vegan Health and Fitness Magazine. I'd really like to come and work for you. You were in Michigan and we were in Austin, Texas. And I was like, well, if you have a way to get here, you
Yeah.
seem like a smart, cool dude, and or if you're willing to work, we've got something for you. And you got on the train and then you showed up. We were all like blown away, like, wow, this guy, I can't believe he came all this way just to work for us. How honored
Yeah.
we were. And then when you got there, we were like, oh, and he's actually a really cool guy who's really smart and capable. So we really enjoyed having you. That was
Yeah.
a wild little experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were a contributing factor. I mean, I'd read the magazine before that. I got sober July 2013, so I probably reached out to you guys. And then that winter, I was in a psychiatric hospital. I was institutionalized twice, and doing outpatient therapy for months, just trying to relearn how to not want to kill myself. And definitely, like, I mean, I spent a lot of time in a yoga studio, and I spent a lot of time focusing on food, and yeah. So I remember, like, reading the magazine and thinking that was cool. And I'd, followed Robert Cheek and stuff beforehand. So I was aware. And I'd been to Austin a bunch of times on tour. And I thought it was a cool city, anyway. So when I realized you guys were there, I'm like, well, whatever. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I'd reached out. And I think by the time I reached out to you guys, I'm pretty sure I'd already planned on going down there, but I'm like, I'd at least been like putting out some feelers, to see like, does it seem like I'm probably gonna do it anyways, but let's try to make it, let's try to make it so I don't fail in the process. But yeah, so that was part of it. So I went there, and then sometime around then, I think, is when I started working for Counterculture as well. It was just a phenomenal restaurant. Love that spot, so it was pretty cool. I knew I needed to get out of Dodge and just kind of go reinvent myself somewhere. And I showed up and started working at a vegan restaurant and working for a vegan magazine. And I'm like, well, it's pretty solid.
So did you go vegan before you went to
Yeah.
the institution? Or
Yeah. No, I've been vegan. So I've been vegan for years before I went sober. I went vegan in 2000. I think it was vegetarian 2002, vegan 2009. I got sober 2013. So I'd already been vegan for years at that point. But I
okay.
think, it just kind of, when I got sober, I don't know, I was reading a lot of Eastern philosophy. I was at the yoga studio a lot, reading Bhagavad Gita, and then definitely, I was cooking a lot, and that was kind of my scene. That's just something that I said, still a big part of my life. Obviously, I cook constantly and eat plants, but getting into the fitness side of things is when I started to think, because you know how it is, dude. You see like, oh, you have to eat 12 chicken breasts a day or you're a pansy, It's just like, and then seeing, what Tori and Corin and like these sort of dudes thinking like,
Washington, Corin Sutton.
yeah, totally, and Cheek especially. I mean, he's been a high profile dude for a while, thinking like, all right, these guys, I remember seeing, yeah, I think like these dudes are jacked. They get it. They know what's up. And I knew that was possible, but it was just cool to see it, I guess, written out more clearly.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that our magazine was able to inspire you, and I'm glad that you were able to come and work with us. And then seeing what you've done from there, we can't help but feel like proud parents in some ways, because we had this experience with you. And then to see, well, you went from there to Australia.
Yep, I moved to Australia for a year, and I worked at a vegan restaurant out there, which was cool. And
You got really into rugby.
Australian rules football, yeah, Aussie rules.
It looks like rugby, but it's not.
Yeah, it's a different sport, but it's cool. That's a common mistake. But yeah, so played a lot of Aussie rules. I started playing that in Austin actually for the Austin Crows, but I got super into it in Melbourne. I mean, that's the religion out there. And then, but yeah, at a certain point, I was road tripping in Australia into the outback, and there's this Jawbreaker song where they say, "What's the furthest place from here?" And I'm like, Battle Creek, Michigan, probably. I'm about as far away. There's kangaroos and koala crossing signs. I'm like, I'm about as far away from where I started as I possibly can. I'm like, now what? So I remember there was a healthcare symposium with Dr. Kim Williams, who was the head of the American Association of Cardiologists or whatever. He was coming to Melbourne. He was a big tennis fan, and the Australian Open was happening. So while he was there, he was doing this, healthcare talk. I was on the vegan Melbourne board, and the promoter of the event had posted it, and I said like, oh, that, and it was, however, I forget how much money. I said, that looks awesome. She's like, or yeah, it looks awesome. There's just no way I could afford it, and then she's like, well, here are the perks. I've been listed them all. And I said, like, I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm saying I'm a minimum wage restaurant worker that's here, like, as an immigrant. Like, I just don't personally have that. And then her name is Lucy. She's awesome. She reached out to me and she said, if you cover your food costs, I'll get you in. I'm like, how much is that? She was like, it was like $20 or something. I'm like, done. So I showed up, and I remember hearing him talk, and a lot of the kind of the Australian, like, yeah, there's a whole different scene for like the Australian, like vegan health people out there. Doctors Aldolphus and Helene Roix. I remember like hearing them talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in that room, and it's all just dietitians and medical doctors and public health workers and nurses and stuff, and then me, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go get an education. Like, I need to, I, it's I liked those people. I liked the people that really knew their shit and had a background. Because a lot of times you get people where it's just like, even when, when I did my own page with the vegan yoga punk or whatever, is like if it was me shirtless doing a headstand, there'd be hundreds of likes and everybody stoked on it. And if I did some long-winded, well-thought thing, nobody cared, you know. And I'm just like, dude, looks are gonna fade at a certain point. That's not a sustainable model. Like having, you know, and I've seen these medical doctors talk, and they got nothing for sale. There's no magic powders, there's no magic crystals or anything. They're just this is just what they do because it's an extension of what they believe as you know as physicians. And I'm like, that's what I need to go do. So I had visited Hawaii before I moved to Australia, and I'm like, I guess I'm gonna go to community college somewhere as a 31-year-old. It's not a bad place. So I applied to Honolulu Community College and started doing, you know, moved out there a few months later and started classes. And then finished at HCC and then went to University of Hawaii at Manoa. Originally, I was trying to do the dietetics pathway, but I changed it to public health, and I think that was a good move. So I got a public health degree, and yeah, and then at a certain point I moved to Michigan to go to the Flint campus of University of Michigan had a MPH program, and I'm applying to University of Michigan Ann Arbor as well, and got accepted there and a few other spots, but despite having a 1.9 high school GPA, I had a 4.0 in college, which is crazy, you know, because I'm old and I care, you know, and
Yeah, me too.
totally. And yeah, so I applied to Yale, and it wound up being cheaper for me to go to Yale than it was to go to the satellite campus of the state school, walking distance from my house in Michigan. So I'm like, I'm not going to not go to I can't not go to Yale if I have that crazy opportunity. So I came out here,
Awesome.
and you know, I don't love it. Like I'm glad to be here. I will be glad to leave. You know, it's like I know you're a similar thing, right? You're UC Berkeley. That piece of paper holds a lot of weight, right?
Mhm.
Yale, same thing. That piece of paper is going to open. It's at least going to get your resume read in a lot of places, you know. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the approach. But yeah, we'll see where I wind up doing a PhD program. I've applied to a few different spots, but
So you're gonna go on and possibly do a PhD program, but there's a chance that you might do something else. And so you have several different options that you posted on your Instagram.
yeah.
I encourage people to go and look at Dallas McCullough's Instagram page and vote
There
on
we go.
what thing you think he should do. But he's looking at Wayne State as number one right now.
Wayne State would be my number one. Yeah, that's I mean, it's in Detroit. I love Detroit. You know, I'm looking at so much of what I study is the link between socioeconomic status and health outcome. You know, especially when you're looking at, I grew up in a food desert, looking at food deserts, you know, looking at built environment, what sort of role that plays. And it's, you know, a place like Yale, it's just, there are more people at Yale from the top 1% than there's the bottom 60%, you know, so it's just poverty is more theoretical here, you know, like they've heard about it, you know, it does exist right over there actually, but people from Yale don't go over there, you know. And I think that I could do a lot more good being in an environment where, you know, where there's other first generation college students and there's other low income people, and there's, you know, it's not all just where WIC and food stamps and stuff are not theoretical. Like this is a thing that, you know, I've dealt with and that a lot of people from the community do, and I think that's the sort of environment I want to work in. Yeah,
What
so hopefully Wayne State. The PhD I applied to there is the PhD in the sociology of health and illness. So
wow.
it's more of a systemic sort of situation. It's very rarely on an individual, you know, level. I mean, I still nerd out on that, but that's not what my research interests are.
What
It's
are
much
your
more on,
research interests? We're looking forward to your research papers
yeah, just,
being published.
systemic, you know,
Systemic
totally.
issues of poverty and food insecurity and
Yeah, it all ties in, and especially I think coming in as, I mean, there's no dudes in public health for starters, unless you're like epidemiology or policy, like there are, you know, but it's, you know, when I roll in, I'm a 6 foot, 200 pound, like pretty heavily tattooed, like fairly muscular man. There's I stand out like a sore thumb.
is
And
it
it,
is that what you mean when you say there's no dudes?
yeah, there's no men. There's
Oh,
no
okay.
men in the,
I didn't know if you were like they're not dudes.
oh no, I mean like just like males. Like there aren't males in the field. I think
Okay.
and there's certainly not nearly enough like poor and working class people that are there. And I think that's a problem, you know, because you think about cultural relevancy. Let's say if me and my classmate, right, we both know the exact same things, but if we go into, let's say, the auto plant that my brother works at, and I start talking about a diet intervention, you know, or the importance of eating plants or exercising, even if we know the exact same things, if it's a 100-pound Chinese girl versus a 200-pound dude with a Detroit Tigers flag, you know, showing up, they might listen to me and not her, you know, which is a shame, but that's the way it is that you're going to find relevancy much more so with people that you can relate to. And there just aren't enough men that are within this, you know.
Right. That's why we need diversity in all these programs, is because there needs to be, everybody's a little ambassador that then goes out to their own community and spreads information.
And specifically economic, you know, there's a long way to go, but there have been major advancements within our lifetimes of, let's say, LGBTQ populations, much more acceptable than it was, you know, in the 80s or something, you know, seeing, yeah, I mean, within, you know, politics or whatever, like it's, you know, seeing like we've had a black president, like that's cool. There's still a long way to go. There's still a whole lot of problems that exist, but like, I didn't think that would have been possible in the 80s. There's no way, you know, or seeing, I don't know, like you know, women making a lot of advancements, a lot of things. But I think when we're talking about socioeconomic status, we're regressing on that. And the gap is widening between the upper and lower classes for sure. And
I'm glad to hear there's somebody in Yale who realizes that and who is going to take their Yale diploma and have that in mind as you go into your future and do things, because it does seem like, yeah, like you and I were talking yesterday about having similar experiences being in these top schools. Like when I went to UC Berkeley for law school, that you're surrounded by people who come from privileged families and they don't, you know, they don't know what it's like. And maybe it, you know, I'm practicing immigration law now, so maybe that's where I needed to go so I could be around people who needed me in that way. And, you know, my partner does environmental law. And so you're going to go and take the education that you're getting somewhere that the other students at Yale aren't going to take it.
You know, I hope so. And you know, and obviously I'm the walking embodiment of structural privilege. I understand I'm a straight, white, English speaking, US born, able bodied man, you know, so I doesn't mean I haven't had to overcome anything. I haven't had to overcome those things, but man, being poor, you know, or being from a very under-resourced place as an American, there's not a great amount of social mobility that exists, you know.
Yeah, the American dream is what was sold to us when we were young. And I know everybody was telling me, and you know, it's why I didn't mind taking out as many crazy student loans as I did. It's like, you're going to go and once you get this education, everything's going to be different. You can just move and you're going to have this fabulous, you know. And I remember all of the movies back in the 80s. It was all like everybody, when you see what they're going to be like in their future, and we all thought we were all going to be rich and have a Ferrari and a big house and all this stuff. And then when it's like, oh, all of that was bullshit, you know, we're like, it doesn't matter how well educated you are. It doesn't matter, you know, all these different rules, is the path that they told you to take. There's still so many things that are just reserved for people who have certain connections with certain other people who are already in positions of power who can give them a leg up.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, if you got a trust fund and, you know, and your whatever, your pops can get you in, like that's one thing. Yeah, but
and I think a lot of people would see people like us, like you say, you know, you're a white male and here I am with the blondie hair again and being a female. And I feel like a lot of people will look at us and be like, you guys are, you know, privileged. And we are in so many ways. So we do acknowledge that. But it's like we still have to acknowledge the ceilings that exist for you know, people who come from our kind of backgrounds also. And there's every ceiling needs to be, you know, shattered. There's no reason why we should live in a society where anybody is held back from their full potential if we really want to have a successful society.
Totally. No, absolutely. Yeah. And socioeconomic status, I think, is just, it's not addressed nearly often enough. And I guess I'm doing it really from a public health standpoint of trying to tackle this.
And so what is it that you ultimately would like to do? Do you have an endpoint goal of like a vision that you see of yourself being in a position where you can influence certain things to change? Or are you kind of leaving it open and you're like, I'm just going to take whatever opportunities come as they may?
I mean, I'm going to take what comes, but if I had to plan out what I think seems like the most likely, like what I'm doing, and let's say I met you 9 years ago, 9 years from now, what am I doing? I think Professor McCullouch is going to be a very popular public health professor that inspires people to give a shit about a lot of this, to give a shit about not just their well-being, but the well-being of others within their communities, and realizing that, there are a lot of systemic problems that lead to that, and it makes it more difficult, but we're not all powerless, we have some level of agency. It might be a whole lot fucking harder, but I think we can do something, and that's my thought process. And especially, again, like, and just trying to be, yeah, I don't know, being the whatever, the big, tattooed, whatever sketchy dude, say, like, the professor says, I like, heavy metal, and I like whatever, I guess fake beer at this point, and I like buffets, and I like, watching football, and I like, whatever, having sex with women, and I like explosions and action movies. And I still give a shit about like eating some vegetables, and I still think you need to talk to a therapist if you've got a mental problem, and I think that you need to take concern for others. And that's an extension of it. And that's what public health is. It's the idea of just trying to prevent illness through preventative action, and that's an extension of that. So like masculinity is fine. This toxic masculinity is especially problematic, and that needs to be dismantled. But that's just kind of extension of this like just stupid American culture that teaches, you want to be a real man, you got to chain smoke Marlboros and only eat raw bacon or something. It's just stupid. And I want to shatter that by teaching the next generation of public health workers to take concern.
I think you're a good person to talk to about the toxic masculinity thing, because I think that I'm a huge feminist, and everybody who knows me knows it, but I also know that there is such a thing as toxic femininity. And I think that for both sides of the coin, the toxic masculinity and the toxic femininity, I don't know how much of this is that you can put on individuals, because every single individual that I've seen that's been guilty of some bad behavior, whether it be the woman playing weak and stupid and, wearing enough makeup to be a drag queen or a circus clown and having tons of cleavage and still trying to be taken seriously on the job and doing, things that people do to self-sabotage, the same, that kind of, and then, the kind of flirtiness and things like that women can bring into inappropriate situations and things like that. That's just as toxic as the man who brings in the flirtiness to inappropriate situations, or the groping, or what have you, or making comments that are sexist, or not wanting to include women in things. There's toxicity that happens on both sides of the aisle. And I think that it's like so many of these things, it's systemic. It's something that has been ingrained in our society, and maybe we can blame the media, maybe we can blame Hollywood. I don't know what the root of it is, but I think the more that we shine lights on these things, it's not to demonize any individuals. I think that that's what's happened a lot, and cancel people, but it should be to show something that needs to be changed so that we can pay attention to it and we can do better in the future. And so I think that like for instance, in your situation, being a single white male who dates a lot, and I'm sure you could be in a situation where you could be marginalized in that way as well. Do you have any like advice or any comments that you want to make about that for other guys?
I mean, okay. I mean, I definitely have no comment on, I guess, whatever. I'm never going to tell a woman how to act, or, what to wear, or any sort of shit. I don't mess with any of that. Like, that's not any of my concern.
Mhm.
I've got control over my own agency, and it's coming from a position of privilege, coming from a position of power. I don't know. I certainly do not feel marginalized in any capacity as a result of being like a straight, white, able-bodied, English speaking, whatever dude. Like, there might be people who are just like, I don't know. Some people might shit on that, but those aren't my people. But ultimately, I understand that's a situation of punching up, you know, and I think it's misdirected hostility, but it's still valid to be pissed off that fortunately, everything is run by people that more or less match up with me on paper for everything. And I don't know what it's like to be in that sort of oppressed situation. So I don't know. I know I'm not going to try to punch down on anybody though, for sure. Yeah, I don't think that, I don't know, being shitty to a person based on whatever their race or gender or sexuality, any capacity is ever a great move. But I also don't know what it's like to be, constantly marginalized for
Right.
anything. I know
Well,
that any aspect of my life, it's pretty much always just the default option. If I ran for president, they would say, "Oh, there's a white guy running for president," or "There's a man running for president." It'd just be always there's a person running for president. You just assume it's a straight white dude that speaks English. Like that's able-bodied. Like unless it's specified otherwise, everything I do or everything I am is going to be the default option, and I don't know what it's like to not be that. So I don't know. I try to sit out. I try to listen to people. If they say something's a problem and I haven't experienced it, generally think they're probably right. They probably believe them, even if I haven't personally dealt with it, as I'm not going to be able to personally deal with most of that.
right. Well, when you worked for the magazine, one of the coolest things that you did was interviewing John Joseph of the Cro-Mags, and
Hmm.
he had just come out with a book with a controversial title, and you did a great job interviewing him. And then we went to a Cro-Mag show to photograph John Joseph, and he was so nice to give us the spot right up front. We had a wristband on so we could go up on the stage and take photos if we wanted to. And like I was saying, like in my background, like I haven't gone to a lot of punk shows, but certainly been to a lot of concerts where mosh pits have broken out. And
Hmm.
I always hated them being a woman, because it's a bunch of rowdy guys getting in a circle and just aggressive masculinity gone wild. And
Hmm.
when we were at the Cro-Mag show, I was like, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to be in this mosh pit and I'm going to be a part of this and I'm not going to let it intimidate me. And within 2 seconds, I got punched in the nose and bloodied and was running out of there. Our photographer was diving on the stage, protecting the camera, and then did all of the other photo shooting from on the stage, rather than the silly idea of trying to do it from in the crowd, getting a shot of a singer from below. But anyway, that whole experience brought up a lot of issues for me, thinking about like the masculinity in that in the punk scene, even though I feel like it's an environment and the music is so much about inclusiveness and everything, but I
Hmm.
found it to be very masculine. Did you find it that way, or how do you
Yeah,
feel?
I mean, it depends on there are different subsets within genres. There are certain bands that have just straight up said like don't mosh to our bands. Like they're like punk bands. They're like don't mosh. Like we hate it. Like ladies to the front sort of thing. So there's a level of that. Talking Cro-Mags. Yeah, I mean these are some not meathead but tofu head dudes. From the '80s. For sure, and that definitely brings out more of that. But it's a level of controlled chaos. If somebody falls down, they're getting picked back up at least. If nobody's going to be like, oh, that person's bleeding, let's punch him more. So it's
Just punch him
I don't
once.
know. It's what's up.
They just punch him once. It's no biggie.
Yeah, it's more like I don't know. I think it's more like we see the pit as like playing sports or something. Like it's gonna get rowdy and you know what you're doing. And if you're in front of the stage, that's gonna happen. But like if you want to stand in the back, you're fine. Nobody's. I went to a show last night on a date. I stood in the back. It was fine. Like nobody was. There were stage divers and stuff, but not where we were. So it's. I think there's a level of you can avoid that generally if you want to. And some artists, have chosen to take the route of just like don't mosh at their shows, and I think that's fair game for them to be able to say as well.
I think
But
that's nice when they say that. But at the same time, I do understand people having so much enthusiasm and exuberance, and that it's a form of dance for some people, and
yeah,
it's a way of interacting with the other people in the crowd. And it is unfortunate that it does tend to make the females have to like get out of the way and get away from the stage. But um, anyway, the interview that you did with John Joseph, I thought was really cool. Did you find that to be like a highlight of your experience with us?
yeah. Well, and I think just getting the musicians and there was Travis Barker was that was very cool. I mean, he's huge, and he just had a some sort of like vegan cheese commercial I just saw like a day or two ago that he just did. So that was cool. I mean, Davey Havok from AFI, that was awesome. Chris from Propagandy, it was just like, I mean, I love Propagandy. It's an amazing band. So yeah, there's a lot of like pretty awesome experiences when we get there. And I know like afterwards when you guys, got like Rob Zombie on there, like that, and you got Doyle from the Misfits. Like, I didn't get to talk to him, but it was still just awesome thinking like, dude, like Doyle was jacked. Like that dude is ridiculous. But yeah, so it was really cool to be able to think like, I remember there, I guess before that there was a whatever episode had like Ed and Holly on the cover. And I
And
remember like and Holly Knoll. I remember like somebody just putting a picture of it up. So they saw it at Whole Foods and it said like vegan straight edge, fitness or whatever. And somebody's like, whoa, things have changed a lot, like spotted at Whole Foods. So it's really cool thinking that some of these ideas could like, be brought into a much more mainstream audience for sure, be able to get like Chris Hannah from Propaganda, like that's like pretty radical stuff. And it's awesome, to be able to think that somebody could pick that up in like, a health food store or something and be able to hear this side of things as well.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you were there to be a part of it and to take that part of the magazine into those genres where it might not have gone if you hadn't been on our staff. So I think we should probably wrap up our interview now because I can see it's getting very dark there at Yale, and you're relying on natural light an awful lot. So before you go completely black, we will say thank you so much for joining us for the Vegan Health and Fitness podcast. And hopefully we can talk again in the future about what you're doing in the field of public health, because I know you're going to be doing great things.
Sounds good. Stay positive, and I will at some point we'll get you on the guest list for some show I'm coming through. I know you guys are down to come hang and get some dinner and stuff, so we'll just match it up at some point. And I'm stoked to see you guys around.
Thank you. Okay, take care.
Cheers.
Peace, health, and happiness. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us reach more people. And hit the bell for notifications if you'd like to be informed when our new episodes come out.